Today for our daily cancellation, we begin with a crazy TikTok video. And, we haven't had one of these in a surprisingly long time on the show, it feels like. I realized sometime around 6 months ago that, I was arguably spending a little too much time on the show offering in-depth analysis of lunatics on TikTok. So try to branch out a bit for a while. But now we're back to that well again because of this video that I stumbled across after it went viral on Twitter. This is a woman... apparently in the year of our Lord, 2024, talking about her COVID travel precautions. Watch.
This is how I travel as a COVID-conscious person. First, I use Covixel nasal spray before going to the airport, and I mask in the Uber, of course, and I always mask in the airport. When I get on the plane, I wipe down as much as I can with Clorox wipes, and I use my Pure Enrichment air purifier for the plane. I wait a little bit to eat after everyone else gets their snacks, and I plan to do as much of my activities outside as possible. When I get home, I wear a mask and test a few days in a row.
Now, again, I emphasize this video is not from 2020 or 2021, even though it would have been insane even back then, but some people are still living like this. In fact, this video, because at first, you see, living in my world, you see a video like that, you're like, well, this must be a parody. I mean, this is not, who is still doing this? So I had to confirm that it was not a parody video, and I don't believe that it is, and because my investigation sent me down a very regrettable rabbit hole where I discovered that COVID conscious is now an identity group on the left where only the wokest of the woke claim membership. I mean, this is high level. These are the high level woke people. This is a pretty exclusive club, is COVID conscious. There's a whole subgenre of TikTok videos where the COVID conscious, years after everyone else has moved on, are still allowing COVID to dominate and dictate their lives. And there are just many examples of this, but here's another one.
Pack up my Air Tour bag with me. So the most important thing to know about me is I still don't want to get COVID. I've never gotten it as far as I know, and I don't plan on doing it, but I really want to see this concert. So we got my stadium bag and my portable air filter. The way I rigged it here with this plastic ring that I had lying around, I figure, I can go in and out with it easy. And then it can also hang on me. And then when it's out and the bag is hanging on me, it blows right up into my face. First thing I want to do is, because I'm bringing extra masks for other people, I'm going to put all of these masks. I have these KF94s that actually go so well with my dress, but I'm going to be wearing probably my Cambridge mask. This is my favorite one. I've also got 3M Auras. I have a bunch of KN95s in the car that I'm also going to put in that are colorful. Since these are for other people, I figure the colorful ones, the black ones, those are the real winners, and any mask is better than no mask. So even if you're not going to wear an Aura, which would protect you the most, you're wearing something, and that's awesome.
Now, that video goes on, by the way, for 7 more minutes. She has barely begun to describe all of her COVID safety measures. Wearing a mask and bringing a stash of several dozen additional masks is just the start of it. It was encouraging to see, by the way, in her among all of her tools, all of her equipment there was, I think I did see some deodorant. So that's progress for these people. But sometimes these COVID conscious videos do feature a little bit of introspection. And these are the interesting ones. I found several videos like this where some of these people, it's actually quite sad. Some of these people seem to be aware of how bizarre their behavior is and how dysfunctional it is. And they do seem to be at some level troubled by it, but they just can't free themselves. They can't break free. Here's one example.
But I was up in the Pearl yesterday, which is like north of downtown, and it was like 10 a.m. and things were buzzing, and everyone, no masks, just not a single one. But everyone was just behaving like things were normal, and I found myself as I was driving wondering what that would be like. Like, I'm so deeply steeped in not normal that, like, the way I live is now my normal. Like, I can't imagine what that normal looks like. And is that part of my stubbornness. And the reason I bring it up is because I don't think that's unusual. Like, frequently I see in, there's a Zero COVID Reddit that I like, and in other online spaces where you see people at the end of the rope and they're like, what if tomorrow I just woke up and was like, let's just take our masks off and try it. And I think about that all the time.
Now, the caption on that video said, what if tomorrow we just stop being COVID conscious? Well, so she's thinking about that anyway, but most of us can answer that question. The answer is that everything would be fine if that were to happen. Most of us are not conscious of COVID. We're aware of it, we're aware of it conceptually. We're not thinking about it. We aren't worried about it. We get sick and we don't test to see if we have it. We just live our lives. We've been doing that for years. Some of us never stopped doing that, even at the height of the panic. And everything is fine. Well, everything isn't fine at all, actually. Things are, pretty bad in many ways, but it has nothing to do with COVID. Let me tell you about a looming threat to our constitutional republic that the mainstream media won't cover. The radical left is plotting a Supreme Court coup. They're not even trying to hide it anymore. These progressive ideologues want to eliminate the court's conservative majority by packing it with their own hand-picked justices. It's not court reform, it's a blatant power grab to get the outcomes they want. And here's the frightening part. If one party controls the House, Senate, and presidency come January, they could restructure the court overnight. With a simple majority vote and a president's signature, their plan becomes reality. It's like they're trying to speed run the destruction of our judicial system. We've already seen their playbook: made up ethical attacks on justices, illegal protests at their home, and open threats from so-called representatives. It's Venezuela-style court packing, and it would spell the end of judicial independence and the rule of law as we know it. But hey, who needs checks and balances when you can have a rubber stamp for your radical agenda, right? But there's hope. First Liberty is leading the charge to protect the Supreme Court from this radical plan. They're fighting to preserve the legitimacy of the court and the separation of powers that safeguards our freedoms. Here's what you got to do. Go to supremecoup.com/Walsh. That's supremecoup.com/Walsh to learn how you can help stop the left's takeover of the Supreme Court. The future of our country is quite literally in your hands. Check out supremecoup.com/Walsh today. And the fascinating thing about these COVID-conscious videos is that many of the people who are still stuck perpetually in like April of 2020 seem again to realize that, or they're on the verge of realizing it. But they've committed so much of themselves to the COVID panic, they've defined themselves by it to such an extent for so long now, like half a decade now, that they feel like they can't turn back. So it's exactly like someone who has been in a cult for years and is now having glimmers of doubt, but they feel like they can't leave the cult, even if part or all of them sort of wants to, because they'd be giving up their whole identity. They'd be starting over from scratch. And there's a little bit of the sunk cost fallacy where you think, well, I've already given so much of myself to this thing that I can't, it's all a waste if I turn back now. If I 5 years later, if I'm like, yeah, okay, COVID I'm not worried about it anymore. Well, I just wasted 5 years of my life. I've alienated all my friends and family. They don't want to be around me. I've done all that for nothing. So that's what they're thinking. And then, of course, there are still the COVID-conscious people who are still, at this point, true believers. Not a hint of it, retrospection or introspection can be detected with these people. But here's the point. I've been thinking about this. How do these people still exist? Like, what's going on in their minds? And I think that it's not a coincidence that the COVID-conscious people are all on the left. I mean, every single one. We take that for granted, of course, but it is worth thinking about that this is not a delusion that exists on both sides of the political spectrum. This is an identity group that exists entirely on the left. I mean, if you see someone today wearing a mask, you could be 1,000% sure that that person is not only on the left, but is far left. There isn't anything analogous even happening on the right. We have some kooky people over on our side too. Kooks come in all shapes, sizes, and political affiliations, but there isn't any group that defines itself by its fear of a disease on our side. On the left is where you find the COVID conscious. It's also where you find every other delusional identity group. The left has, as we know, many different identity groups, and many of them are fundamentally defined by their rejection of reality. Why is that the case? Well, because this is one of the primary ways that the left propagates itself and recruits new adherents. And it's a method, it's something about the left that isn't discussed nearly enough, which is that they legitimize mental illness and they provide the mentally ill with a community where they will be encouraged and affirmed. So when conservatives encounter a hypochondriac, which that's what these people are, you're still wearing a mask, you're walking around with an air purifier blowing into your face. I mean, this is, at any other point, somebody like this would go to a therapist, they'd be immediately recognized and diagnosed as a hypochondriac, and hopefully they'd get some psychiatric treatment for that. So on the right, when we encounter a hypochondriac whose whole life revolves around avoiding illness, we respond by telling the person that they're wrong. And maybe we're sort of blunt about it in some cases. We say that they're delusional, they need psychiatric help. Now, there are polite ways of putting it and rude ways of putting it, but generally speaking, telling someone like this that they're wrong, that this is a delusional belief, they need help, that is morally and ethically and factually the right way to respond. But the thought leaders on the left, they're not going to say that. Instead, they open their arms to the hypochondriac and they say, yes, you're right. COVID is still an existential threat to humanity. In fact, we have an identity group ready-made just for people like you. Come over here with us. Bring your masks and your hand sanitizer. We've got a space set aside just for you. It's already been cleaned with Lysol wipes. We'll never tell you that you're wrong about anything. You're safe here. Affirmation is the cardinal virtue of the left. It is really the only virtue. What you believe is true because you believe it. However you live is the right way to live because it's how you live. Nobody is delusional, except Trump voters, of course. But all other viewpoints and lifestyles are legitimate and true. And in fact, the more removed from reality they are, and the more self-destructive they are, the more legitimate they are. This is simultaneously how they spread mental illness, the left does, and how they expand their own ranks by recruiting and validating those mental illnesses. The COVID cautious community is just one of many examples. This is maybe the greatest secret of the left's cultural success. There are no more insane asylums because leftism is the asylum. And that is why the COVID cautious people, and especially the ideology that validates them, are today canceled. Thanks for checking out this video. If you'd like to listen to my full podcast on the go, you can check out The Matt Walsh Show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.